Okay, so in the last class, we discussed about the concept of VMware and we understood the terminologies of VMware. We went through the topic of what is VMware, what is VDS, what is port group. In today's class, we are going to basically do the lab of VMM integration with ACI. So if you remember, I had told you guys that basically VMM integration is done so that we can add the endpoints running on the hypervisor dynamically to the EPGs on ACI Fabric. So in the bare metal host lab, which we did, what we did was we had to place the interface in the EPG by doing a static binding, and then the endpoint got discovered in the EPG, right? But this cannot be done, or this is practically not possible when we have many endpoints and many VLANs. Otherwise, adding the interface one by one for each and every VLAN under the EPG would become a quite hectic task. So to avoid that, what we have is we have the option of VMM integration, that is virtual machine manager integration, where we are supposed to integrate the hypervisor with the ACI fabric and add the endpoints running on the hypervisor to the EPGs of ACI dynamically. Okay. And for this particular lab, we are going to integrate VMware vCenter server, right? So VMware uses vCenter as a centralized application where all the ESXIs can be centrally managed, and it uses the VDS, virtual distributed switch, which basically spans across multiple ESXi at the same time and helps you manage the port groups in more efficient manner. So using the vCenter and VDS of VMware, we will basically perform the integration. Before I start, does anybody have any questions on what is VDS, what is VMware, or anything else? Everyone is with me so far? Does anybody have any questions, guys?
Akash, in every VDS, there is a kind of any tables will be there, how the Ceph table is there kinds of any VDS is manage the local databases.
It just maintains the MAC address table, pretty much like any normal L2 switch, where
Mhm.
it will learn the MAC address on the port group. So for every port group, it will just maintain a MAC address table where we will have an entry of the MAC addresses. That's it. Because it's a layer 2 switch, it doesn't do layer 3 routing.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. All right.
So
So for
what
today's
is
lab, what
the
we
MCP on something policy is there?
miscabling protocol.
What it means? What's the purpose of that? Why we are enabling that?
Miscabling protocol is basically used for back-to-back connections on your ACI fabric. So in case if a user uses leaf to leaf or spine to spine, right, is not allowed in ACI. So if someone connects a leaf to leaf or spine to spine, then miscabling protocol is basically going to detect that connectivity, any kind of loop that is getting created in the network will be detected by miscabling protocol, and that port will be put in the error disabled state. So if you are connecting leaf to leaf, spine to spine, or any kind of STP, right? Any kind of thing that that creates a loop in the network, the port will be disabled using this cabling protocol. Yeah.
And second thing, sir, what in each and every policy, if we not create any policy, means there is default option is there. Default means
Correct.
default. It will enable it or it will disable it. What it will.
So every setting is different. It all depends whether you're going to add that particular endpoint, whether you're going to add that particular policy in your policy group or not. If you don't add it in the policy group, then that particular setting is not going to be enabled. But if you add the default policy in the policy group, then whatever is the default setting, that would get enabled on the interface.
It will be different for all. Means CDP it will be different and LLDP it will be default
Yes,
means
it's not necessary that
it
every setting would be disabled by default only. It depends on policy to policy. What are the options, and accordingly, the default variable, default parameter will be set. So it varies from policy to policy.
Just show any policy how we can check with disable default means whether it's enabling it or it's disabling it. How to check?
I'll just show it to you. I'm just logging inside ACI. Oh, I don't know why. Okay.
Abbas, can we practice this ACI lab in EVNG? Is it possible?
Not on EVNG. We have a simulator of ACI, which can be used for getting familiar with the GUI, but you will not be able to test any data traffic on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a simulator, but that is just to get familiar with the dashboard. But you will not be able to like verify the ping pong and everything. That doesn't work. All right. So what we are going to do is I'm going to show you guys the lab that we are going to have practice today. So we are going to do the lab of VMM integration with ACI. I'm going to draw the physical connectivity and the logical connectivity.
Akash, one quick question here.
Mm-hmm.
Miscabling protocol, as you said, right? That we can enable in ETG level or VLAN level. We can.
No, that is enabled on the physical interface policies, not on the logical.
Oh,
It is for physical interface policies. Okay, so this is my leaf 101 and leaf 102. This is leaf 101 and leaf 102. So these leaf switches are getting connected to my ESXi host, which is 20.0.20.200. Okay. On this ESXi host, we have VMNIC 2 and VMNIC 3.
Are you showing anything?
Oh, I think my screen was not. Okay. And this is my vCenter 20.0.54.8. This is my vCenter server. And the vCenter and the ACI fabric and my ESXi, everything is connected via out of band. Okay, so I have an out of band reachability between them. So this is my out of band cloud. Okay, this is my OOB. So my Epic, my vCenter, and my ESXi, everyone is able to ping each other using my out of band reachability. This is 254.11, this is 254.8, and this is 20.0.2200. So everyone is having my management reachability. Okay, my data traffic will go from here. So here I have got my app VM and I have got my web VM. There are two virtual machines running on this ESXi host. So these VMs are basically going to just delete this. So these VMs are basically going to reach to my gateway on the ACI. Okay. So my data traffic will go from here. These links are this interfaces are running in active standby mode. I don't have a port channel done over here. So on the leaf switch, they are getting connected on port 1/9. Okay. I need to cross verify this interface. I'm not 100% sure. This interface is 1/9. Give me 1 second. I'll just go in my previous class recording to check the interface ID. Okay. Because I really don't remember. I'm just getting confused. Oh man, my credentials are expired. That was the last thing. I think it's 1/9. We'll try to configure it as 1/9 and then take a look at it. Okay, I don't remember. My credentials are expired. Okay, never mind. So I think this is 1/9, or maybe I will go back and check later on. We will try to configure on 1/9. If it doesn't work, maybe I'll check. All right. So what we are going to do is for VMM integration with ACI, the VMM integration basically works in 4 steps. Okay. There are 4 steps to configure VMM integration. The first step is to create physical policies, of course, for ESXi to leaf connectivity. Okay. The first step is to configure physical policy. So we'll configure interface policies for 1/9, which is getting connected on ESXi host from leaf 101 and leaf 102. So I'll configure this interface policy. Once my interface policy is configured, then I'm going to configure my VMM vCenter domain. Okay. So this VMM vCenter domain, when I configure this vCenter domain will push, it will push a virtual distributed switch on the vCenter server. So my ACI will create a VDS. Okay, my Epic controller would create a VDS and it will push this VDS on the vCenter server. So this VDS will not be locally created on the vCenter. Typically, what we do is we go in the vCenter, for example, here. This is my vCenter server 254.8. So ideally, what we can do is we can go in the vCenter and here I can create a VDS, a distributed switch like this. For example, I give the name as local VDS. Okay. So we can either create a VDS locally like this. My VDS got created. And then inside this VDS, we can create a port group. Okay, create a new port group. I give the no port group as local port group, local test PG, local test port group. So you can create a port group like this. And here you can define the VLAN ID that you want. Let us say VLAN 199 and submit. So you can create a port group like this. You can create a VDS like this. So when you configure VMM integration with ACI, we will not create the VDS or we will not create the port groups locally. Instead, we will push a port group from the ACI fabric. So in the ACI fabric, we would create a VMM vCenter domain. Okay. So if you remember, I told you that ACI supports multiple hypervisors. So we have Microsoft hypervisor supported, that is Microsoft Hyper-V. For that, we can create an SVCMM domain. We support OpenStack hypervisor. We support Red Hat hypervisor, and we support VMware hypervisor. So there are 4 hypervisors which are currently supported. From the container point of view, we support Cloud Foundry, we support Kubernetes, and we support OpenShift. So for this lab, I would create a VMM vCenter domain. When I create this domain, it's going to ask me the details. What is the name of the virtual switch? What is the vCenter credentials that you want to use? What is the vCenter IP address on which we want to push? So I will provide all these details on ACI. In return, what ACI would do is ACI will actually create a virtual switch. So for example, I give a name as Akash VDS, for example. So ACI will create an Akash VDS and then run an API. And using the API, it will go on the vCenter IP address, which I will provide. It will log in using the credentials, which I will provide, and it will create a VDS over here. So ACI will create a virtual switch. That is your step number 2. VMM vCenter domain. In bracket, I can write over here to create a VDS. To create VDS from ACI. Okay. So once your virtual switch gets created, the next step is create logical tenant policies. So I would create my logical tenant policies, that is app and web, right? So let us draw it over here. I'll create a tenant. Let us call it as SBI tenant. So under the SBI tenant, okay, let me just first draw the entire schema. I'll create a VRF. I'll create my bridge domains. I'll create my application profile, and I'll create my EPG. Okay, so for example, SBI VRF, broad VRF, then app bridge domain, web bridge domain, SBI application profile, app EPG, web EPG. Okay, so third step is to create this logical policies. Once you create the logical policies, now the next step is to map your map your EPGs to the VMM vCenter domain. So once you map your EPGs to the VMM vCenter domain, okay, once you map your EPGs to the VMM vCenter domain, every EPG that you create would correspondingly create a port group on this VDS. So every EPG will create a VDS, every EPG will create a port group on this VDS. So EPG represents what? EPG represents your port group. Every EPG you have on ACI, when you map it to the VMM vCenter domain, it would create a corresponding port group over here. That is app EPG port group and web EPG port group. So every EPG that you create on ACI would indirectly create a port group on the VDS. So these port groups are representing my EPGs of ACI. Okay. Once my port groups are ready, now I will push this VDS to ESXi host. So now I need to push this VDS from vCenter. I need to push it to the ESXi. And once my VDS is available on the ESXi, now we'll move the VMs to the EPG port group. Last step, move the VMs to EPG port groups and test reachability. Okay. So the last step would be, once my port groups are ready on the VDS and I push the VDS over here, now I can connect my app VM to app EPG port group, web VM to web EPG port group, and then ping the gateway and verify the reachability. So in short, in VMM integration, instead of using the local port groups, instead of using this local port group and local VDS, what we do is we push a VDS and a port group from ACI and we move the VMs to this newly created port groups and test the reachability towards ACI fabric. Did everybody understand this, guys? Anyone who has any question on this? Yeah.
Yesterday we discussed via vCenter we are creating videos, right?
Via vCenter we are creating videos. That's right.
So in ACI vCenter is located or how? How is
No.
via ACI we are
vCenter is
creating
a
these videos?
vCenter is a product from VMware. Okay. vCenter is a product from VMware. So VMware uses vCenter for managing multiple ESXi. Okay. But now, because we want the VMs to become part of my EPGs of ACI, what we are doing is we are managing the VDS from ACI. Instead of managing the VDS locally from the vCenter and creating the port groups locally like I did just now, right? Here I created a port group. Instead of creating a port group like this locally from the vCenter, I will push my EPGs, which I have in ACI, as a port group on this VDS. That is the intention.
We are managing vCenter, complete vCenter, right?
Not entire vCenter. We are just managing the VDS and the port group. That's it from the ACI. The other things that you have, right, that is managing these VMs, changing the VMs port group and changing the VMs NIC adapter and everything, that has to be done locally. That cannot be done from ACI. ACI will just push the VDS over here and it will push the port group. After that is done, the rest of the thing, that is further pushing this VDS on the ESXi host over here and then making the VMs connect to that port group, that EPG port group. This all things needs to be done locally.
Okay.
So Akash,
I will show it to
ACI
you
will
guys.
only
I
do
think
the,
it will be a bit clear more.
yeah,
I'm
Akash.
sorry, come again.
Yeah, Akash. So the ACI will only do the config push, right? Not a config sync.
Correct.
Right? There is no config sync.
No, it can. It can. So if you have a port group, if you have a production VDS,
Okay.
you can give a same name of that VDS over here. So instead of pushing a new VDS, it will connect to the same VDS that is available in production. And then you can further push the EPGs as a port group on that production VDS. So no need to push a new VDS in that case.
But it's still not a sync, right? They won't sync each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, it will not pull the information completely from that VDS and all that. It is one-way API calling. It is not two-way API.
Okay.
It can do a push and pull both, but from vCenter we cannot push anything directly to ACI unless ACI raises a API request. From vCenter we cannot do anything directly.
Okay.
Akash, one quick question here. So the each EPG is binded to one port group, right?
Each EPG will be representing as a port group. Yes.
So earlier sessions you said, right, EPG to EPG, intra and inter, that communication can use the filters.
That all rules reply the same. Yes.
Okay.
So here also app VM to web VM communication, because the gateway is on ACI, the traffic will come on ACI, and then we require a contract for the communication.
In demo,
we will do this lab now.
No, okay.
I think everybody will be clear.
Okay.
Akash, I had a question with regards to the UCS. If you can go back to your UCS screen. Sorry, the vCenter screen.
vCenter.
Sorry, vCenter, sorry.
Yeah.
So in vCenter, on the very top left, you see the IP address of the vCenter, and below it you see CCI DC. So
this is the data center name.
Okay, so this is just a name, right? There's nothing that holds in it or any rules that get acknowledged with it.
I mean, it is significant. Basically, when you do any API calling, right, you need to specify under which data center the host is and where you want to push or pull the details. So even if you do PowerShell scripting, right, to manage the VMs through shell scripting, this data center name plays a significant role.
Right, but from if I'm not integrating it with ACI, from a standalone vCenter.
Even then, if you do shell scripting, right, and you want to push certain policies on multiple, let us say you want to change the port group of 100 VMs. So you will not do it manually, you will do shell scripting. So in that shell scripting also, you will have to mention the data center name where those VMs reside, so that when the shell script executes, it will go and check on that data center, the VM, and then it will change the port group.
Right. So one aspect of it is the hierarchical structure of the module of the component itself, which needs to be called and addressed accordingly. And I get that part. But then, so can I have like say I have a data center in India, I have a data center in the US, another data center in UK. Each data center has about say 20 ESX boxes in them, right? Can I create 3 different data centers like that? Like
yes, I can create like multiple DCs over here, new data center, and then under each DC I can add the host, so I can manage it from centralized level.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So this CCI DC which is created is locally created here, right? It's not pushed from ACI.
No, it is locally created.
Can we do this via ACI?
No, you cannot. From ACI, you can just manage the VDS part and the port group part. That's it. Nothing else can be done from the ACI.
So whenever EPG we will associate to VMM domain, it will create subsequent port group here, is it?
Port group, yeah, correct. That's right.
Okay.
So let us start. It looks very interesting. I mean, it sounds very interesting. Once I do it, I think you will be getting more clarity and you will find it very interesting as well. So you can follow the steps. I will start the configurations from the first step. That is configuring my interface policies. Okay. Before that, probably I can just go and check on my leaf if this interface 1/9 is showing me SFP or not. Well, I don't recollect which interface you're supposed to use. Or alternatively, if anyone has access to the portal, since my credentials are expired, no, on 9 we don't have the SFP. So I think it's 10. Okay, I think it's 10 because 10 has an SFP. So what I'll do is I'll just configure this as port 10. Alternatively, if anyone has access to the portal, I mean, of course, everybody has. You guys can just check the video from my previous batch for VMM class and let me know if the interface is 1/10 in that lab demo. If anyone can take that and do me a favor, please. So we'll start the configuration. Okay, I'll start the configuration from physical connectivity policy point of view. Let us start. So I'll go in ACI. Under the fabric tab, we'll start the configuration. I'll go under access policies and we'll create a.
It's 1/9 only.
In my previous lab class.
Yes, 1/9 only.
Okay, but strange.
Bare metal lab, Akash?
Not bare metal lab, a VMM lab. On 1/9, actually it says SFP message, so definitely it's not there. Let me just do one more thing. I don't know, someone has changed anything or because even I recollected it was 1/9. Let's check over here, show interface brief. Okay, I'll use 1/10 because on both the switches 1/10 is up and running. So I think it's 1/10. Let us check, okay? It's okay. Let us check. So I'll start the config. I'll go in access policies and we'll start the configuration. I'll just create some of the interface policies. For example, I'll create a link level policy. We'll call it as VMM 10 GB link level. Configure the speed as 10 gig. I'll create a CDP enable policy. And I'll create an LDP disable policy. Okay. Bundle these policies in our policy group. Before that, I'll create a VLAN pool. I'll create a dynamic VLAN pool this time. Since we are doing a VMM lab, it's a dynamic VLAN pool I'll create from VLAN 2 to VLAN 99. My VMM VLAN pool is created. Now the domain, okay. So here the domain is not available. You can see there is no option to create a VMM domain. So VMM domain option comes over here, okay. So typically when we do the mapping, right, what we do is we create the policies plus we create the VLAN pool. This VLAN pool we map it to domain, and this domain we map it to AAEP, okay. And then AAEP is part of policy group, right? This is the typical flow. But while doing VMM integration lab, you are changing the flow. You are going to change the flow, although the mapping would be different, but the flow of config would be different. Mapping will be the same. So the policy becomes part of VLAN pool. Policies and VLAN pool become part of the policy group. AAP becomes part of the policy group. However, this domain we create over here in step number 2. Okay. So I have created my policies over here. I've configured the VLAN pool and I've configured and the domain, right? The domain I'm not configuring it right now. Okay. So domain I'll configure in the next step. And then inside that domain, I will map my VLAN pool and my AAP. So indirectly, this domain will get mapped with the policy group and with the profile. Everybody understood this, guys? So this domain, we don't create it right now. We will create it in the next step. I'll just continue with the flow and we will then again connect the dots. Okay, just bear with me for a couple of minutes. Just remember that the domain is not created right now. So I've configured the policy. I've configured the VLAN pool. Now I'll create my interface policy group. So I'll go under interfaces. Here I'll create a policy group. Since we are using a single interface, I'll create a VMM policy group. Okay, here I was just looking if we can find that interface ID. We cannot. Interface policy group. And I'll call my link level policy. I'll call my CDP policy, my LLDP policy. And here I'll create a double AEP, but this will be a blank AEP. Okay. I'll create a blank AEP. We'll call it as VMM double AEP, but there is no domain associated to it. Okay. So this double AEP is empty. It doesn't have any domain or VLAN pool. Now click on submit. So my policy group is ready. This policy group, I'll attach it to my interface profile 1/10. Let us create an interface profile, VMM int. So in VMM also, okay, we just have VMM int profile. This is for VMM. Interface ID, I'll keep it as 1/10. And I'll map the policy group. So this policy group attaches on port 1/10. Now click on submit. Now this interface belongs to leaf 101 and 102 both. So I'll create a single switch profile. Okay, I'll create a single switch profile. I'll call it as leaf 101 and 102. Under this, we'll attach both the leaf switches. And I'll map my interface profile to it. Okay. So my interface profile is now mapped to the switch profile. My physical configuration is done. This is my step number 1, configuring your physical interface policies. But except the domain. Domain is missing. So now I'll create this VMM vCenter domain. Okay. So I'll go under the virtual networking tab. And here I'll create a VMware domain. I'll give the name of this VDS as Cisco VDS. It's a virtual distributed switch from VMware. Now this domain will use, so if you remember the hierarchy is policies, VLAN pool, domain, double AEP, policy group, interface profile, and switch profile. This is the hierarchy. Now, typically this VLAN pool maps to domain maps to double AEP. But we have skipped this part, right? So now in step 2, I'm creating this domain. So now I will map the VLAN pool and the double AEP to this domain while creating the vCenter domain. So creating the vCenter domain, it's asking me the double AEP. What is the double AEP we created, guys? VMM double AEP. And what is the VLAN pool we created? VMM VLAN pool. So we did map the VLAN pool and the double AEP to the domain indirectly. Okay. So this double AEP is pointing to which interface? This double AEP is pointing to interface 1/10. So this domain will get attached on port 1/10 because this interface is mapped to E1/10
It's 1/10
on leaf 101 and 102.
1/8. In the starting, you selected 1/9. Later, you changed 1/8 in previous batch video.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll just change this, guys. I remember that in the last class also I had messed it up and then I had to change it. So thank you for that. I just changed this. So the exact interface is 1/8, guys. Okay. So we'll go in interface profile. I'll just change the interface ID over there. So this is actually 1/8. All right. So we'll again come under the domain. So while creating the domain, guys, it's asking us the name of the VDS. We'll call it as Cisco VDS. Map the VLAN pool and the double AEP. So this double AEP that we created, okay, this double AEP is pointing to interface ID 1/8 on leaf 101, 102. So what will happen as soon as I attach this domain to the double AEP, this two on leaf 101, 102, 1/8 will have a VMM domain attached to it. So ACI knows that there is a hypervisor connected. And this is the VLAN pool which we need to allow, VLAN 2 to 99. Okay, but that's what this step is. It's basically going to tell ACI that on which interface your hypervisor is connected. And apart from this, it's also going to push the VDS. So to push the VDS, it will require the details. It will require the username and password to log in inside the vCenter. So I'll create a credential policy. And here we will write down the username and the password. So password I'll just copy paste from here. So my ACI will log in on this vCenter using this username administrator at vSphere.local. And once it logs in, what is the IP address of the vCenter? So we can give the IP address 20.0.254.8. Sorry. Just give a name to the controller. So controller is nothing but the API. Okay. And you can provide the IP address of the vCenter. What is the data center name? Data center name, you can pick it from here, CCIDC. It is case sensitive, so make sure you give the exact name and the credential policy. So now ACI will log in. ACI will log in on this IP, on this data center, using these credentials, and will create a virtual switch. Okay. So these are the details that I have given. So ACI will log in on 254.8 using these credentials. We'll create a switch with this name. How many number of uplinks do you want on this switch? So when the switch will get pushed, I'm going to connect two physical adapters. Okay. So the uplinks is what? Uplinks is nothing but every virtual switch will have two types of ports. Okay. Every virtual switch has host facing port groups and uplinks, which connect to the physical adapter of the server. So these are known as uplinks. These are logical ports on the VDS, which binds to the physical adapter. So the number of uplinks you define, those many physical adapters you can map. So in my example, I have only two physical adapters. So I'm going to say I want only two uplinks on this VDS. The discovery protocol I will use is CDP. Okay. Now, before I click on submit, here you can see I have only one switch, that is local VDS. Once I click on submit, here you should see a VDS getting created. You can see this. A Cisco VDS got created. And here you can see a logs. In the logs, we can see a user has logged in with the name administrator. And he went into this data center. It created a folder with the name Cisco VDS. And inside that folder, it has created a virtual switch. Okay, you can see this. The virtual switch got created. A port group got created. So inside this, there is a default port group which got created as well. So my ACI was able to successfully log in inside the vCenter and create a virtual switch. But this virtual switch is present over here. Okay. So my ACI via out of band reachability, it logged in inside the vCenter. So if I log in on Epic, right, my Epic has reachability to my vCenter. So from here, if I do a ping, 20.0.54.8. Okay. My Epic is able to ping vCenter. So there is an out of band reachability. So my Epic controller logged inside the vCenter using API and it created a virtual switch. But this virtual switch is currently present on the vCenter. If I go on my ESXi host, this is my ESXi host. And here, if I go under the, let us go from here. So here, if I go on virtual switches, you can see I just have one virtual switch, vSwitch 0. Okay, if I minimize this, I don't have any switch. You cannot see any switch over here. There's only one switch, that is the default switch. So currently my ACI has pushed this switch on the vCenter. It's not present on this ESXi. Okay. So this is step number 2, that is creating a VMM domain, which indirectly creates a virtual switch. Now, the next step is to create my logical tenant policies. So I'll now configure this part as BI tenant, VRF, bridge domain, and my EPGs. But before I do that, for this BDs, I need to define the gateway IP. So what is the subnet that I'm going to use? We will use the subnet of app VM. So let us just log in inside app VM. So this VM is having a static IP assigned by us. We'll just take a look at the subnet of this VM. So we'll configure the same gateway IP under the EPG. So this is 1.100 is the gateway over here. Let's run CMD as administrator because it's showing the host name as. Okay, so this app VM is having subnet of 1.100. The IP is not there. Let us just configure the IP address. It is having a PIPA IP right now, so I'll just configure the IP address locally. So the IP address is there, but I don't know why it's showing a PIPA IP. I'll just change the IP to 1.2 maybe, and the gateway as 1.1. I think now the PIPA IP should go off. It's still showing a PIPA IP. Yeah, now it's okay. And the second VM is the web VM. So let us just log in on web VM also. So for apps, we are going to use the subnet of 192.168.1.1. And for web, oh, this is also in the same subnet. So let me just change the subnet over here. I put this guy in the network of 2.2 network, okay? So I'll keep this 2 at 2.2. And the gateway is 2.1. So the other gateway is 1.1. This gateway is 2.1. Okay. All right. So let us do this configuration. So I'm going to now configure the logical policies. Let us come back on ACI. Under the tenant tab, I'll create a new tenant. We'll call it as SBI tenant. And here I'll create a production VRF.
Akash, just one small query. So far, the physical policy is not yet applied, right?
When you say applied, no, because the interface is not part of any EPG.
Okay.
So the policies are created, but nothing will get pushed unless the interface is also mapped to a logical policy.
Okay.
All right. So my tenant and my VRF is created. Let us create the bridge domains. So I'll just drag and drop from here. We require two bridge domains, that is app bridge domain and web. So for app BD, the gateway I'm going to configure is 192.168.1.1/24. And similarly, I'll create one for web also. Web BD, the gateway I'll choose is 192.168.2.1. This is the same gateway that we have defined on the VM. Right now, it's not going to ping because the VMs are not part of the EPG port groups. So if I try to ping the gateway, it's not going to ping. Okay. Similarly, here also, it's not going to ping because the VMs are not part of the gateway. All right. So now what I will do is create the EPGs. So I'll call this as SPI AP. I'll create two EPGs, app EPG and web EPG. Map app EPG to the app bridge domain and web EPG to web bridge domain. Once my logical policies are created, okay, submit. So my EPG is also created. Now what I want is, I want this EPGs to be pushed as a port group over here. You can see this diagram. This VDS currently doesn't have any port group. So now what I want is on this VDS, I want app EPG port group and web EPG port group. Right now, if I go on the VDS, there is no port group over here. So my EPG should get pushed as a port group. For that, I will map my EPG to the VMM domain. In the previous class, we had mapped the EPG to which domain, guys? In the previous lab?
Physical domain.
We had mapped it to physical domain because the endpoint was connected as a physical domain. Today, the endpoint is connected on my hypervisor. So I will map my EPG to the VMM vCenter domain. Let us do that. So I'll go under the EPG, under the domain, I'll select VMM domain and push this policy immediately. So once I map my EPG to the VMM domain, if you come over here, okay, it's not created. Well, that is strange. My EPG is mapped.
EPG call VM under as well, na? In VM, we need to add EPG as well.
No, that is not required. Before that, it should get created over here.
Okay.
Let us check. Yeah, let us check if we are seeing any error, guys. Let us check on the VMM vCenter domain if we are seeing any error message. Because the port group should get created.
We need to
over here.
We need to add na in VDS maybe.
No, it gets created over there. It should get created. I can see some fault message. LACP. Cisco VDS LACP policy. LACP lag policy. It's strange. We have not created an LACP policy. STP. Okay, there are some strange policy errors which we were able to see. What was this one? Fail with error. VLAN controller, UDP, VLAN, nothing. However, it is cleared, but we can see the policy error. Let us just go back and check.
So VM domain is active or not right now on the VM side?
The VMM domain is created, guys. Okay, here you can see my VDS is pushed on the vCenter.
Active or inactive mode. We have two, three mode are there. Na? Click the controller in their online. Yeah, online. Now, can we do one thing, sir? We need to add port group, na? Because we are basically no. I'm asking only for just open DVS. Yes, there port group. We need to call EPG here. After we call EPG here, we do the same practice. That's why I'm asking. We just right click and add EPG here. Then after adding my EPG showing on VM machine.
No, it's not required. It's not required.
Okay.
Let us do one thing. I can see some fault message over here. Let us just read the fault message. Why is my
Akash, can you refresh vCenter and try?
No, man. It gets created immediately. I mean, as soon as I push it, as soon as I attach it, it should get. Oh, see, man. I don't know why it did not show us earlier. It should have shown us. Typically, I don't require a refresh. It gets created directly. It gets pushed.
Sometimes
my port group is created. Yeah, sometimes it's strange. My port group got created. Okay, SBI tenant, SBI application profile, app EPG port group. Okay, so that one port group is created as soon as we attach the. Okay, let us go back to the tenant. So as soon as we attach the EPG to the domain, it gets pushed as a port group. Okay, and here if you see, once the port group gets pushed, it has taken this VLAN. Okay, so this VLAN belongs to my VLAN pool that we have created, that we have attached to the VMM domain. So every EPG which gets mapped to the VMM domain, it gets pushed as a port group and picks up a VLAN ID dynamically. Okay. Similarly, what I will do is I will also attach the web EPG. So even web EPG should get pushed as a port group. Okay. So here we should see a web port group created as well. I think it is taking some time. Okay. Ideally, it should happen immediately. I mean, this refresh and all is not required. Yeah, but today refresh is required. So my web EPG also got created and it had picked up a VLAN ID as 68. So my both the EPGs are pushed as a port group on my vCenter domain. And now here, if you see another virtual networking. So because my domain integration is done, right? Because my domain integration is done, here you will be able to see all the details. So here you will be able to see the hypervisor. Okay, this is my hypervisor 20.200. Currently, this hypervisor has these VMs running on it, app VM, ASA VM. So the same list which we see over here, right? This VMs. So these VMs are visible. And on this hypervisor, how many NIC adapters we have? Okay, NIC 0. NIC 0 is currently up and running. You can see if I bring my cursor. So NIC 0 is up on 100 Mbps. NIC 2 is up on 1000 MB. NIC 1 is currently down. And NIC 3 should be up as well. Okay, so NIC 3 is also up. So it shows you the status of VM next. And then if you bring a cursor on the VM, it will show you the status of the VM. It's Windows 7. It's in powered off state. The one which we are going to use this web VM. It is currently powered on, right? And then we are going to use this app VM that is also powered on. So we can see all these details over here. And further, if you want to drill down a bit, you can click on the VM from here. For example, if I click on the web app VM, so it has not picked up the IP over here yet. Refresh this. In case if here the IP is visible, only then the IP will be visible there also. Yeah, here the IP is visible now. So here also it should pick up the IP.
So if we have write access to this, we can create a VM from here as well, right?
No. You cannot create any VM or anything. You don't have that option. You can just, it just pulls the inventory. Okay, it will just pull the inventory. You will not be able to push anything apart from the port group and the videos. Okay. 1 second, guys. All right. So next, what we are going to do is, let us come back to this. So my logical tenant policy is created, mapping of APG to the VMM domain is done. Now this particular VDS is completely ready. Okay. Now what we want is we want this VDS to be present on this ESXi so that I can attach this app VM to the app port group and web VM to the web port group. But to do that, I will have to go in my vCenter. This cannot be done from ACI. Okay. Once ACI pushes the VDS, now the management of this VDS cannot be done from ACI. So from here now what I will do is if I click on Cisco VDS, if I bring on host, you can see there is no ESXi host connected to this VDS. Okay. So what I will do, I'll do right click and I'll say I want to add a new host. I want to add a new host. Select the host which you want to add. We have only one host. Now on this host, these are the adapters out of which VMNIC 0 is used by vSwitch 0. So we are left with these three. And as per my diagram, you can see we have VMNIC 2 physically getting connected to leaf 102 and VMNIC 3 physically getting connected to 101. So I'm going to now select the same. I'll select VMNIC 2. I'm mapping it to uplink, and VMNIC 3, mapping it to uplink. So these two VMNICs are now connected to my VDS. If I click on next, VM kernel port 0, we don't disturb it. These all VMs are present on the host.
Akash, can you show that how you added the physical adapter? I missed that part.
Yes. So you can, to add the physical adapter, you need to select the adapter. Let us say VMNIC 1, and then select the uplink where you want to map it. So currently I have only two uplinks. Both are mapped with physical adapter.
These are only logically connected to VDS, but it's still physically connected to our leaf switches.
Our ACI leaf, correct. So this is internal mapping. Okay, this diagram, if I explain it to you guys, this is internal mapping. This is mapping. This is my physical server. This is my virtual switch VDS. This VDS has two uplinks. This uplink you can see over here, and these are the physical NIC 4, out of which VMNIC 0 is connected to management. VMNIC 1, 2, and 3. So in this step, I am mapping my uplink number 1 to VMNIC 2 like this, and uplink number 2 to VMNIC 3. And these are physically connected to my leaf switches. Got it? So this mapping is what we are doing in this step, mapping the VDS uplinks to the physical uplink. Clear?
We are not bundling those ports, right? So which one will
No.
be?
It does hash. It does hash and selects any one.
Okay, and from the switch side, there is no VPC configuration or anything, right? So from 101 and 102, there are two switches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be treated as individual ports from both switches.
Correct. Correct. There is no port channeling or anything.
So from spanning tree perspective, how is it going to work? Like both the ports will be.
No, these switches do not participate in STP. For Leaf and ACI, this is the end host. Your virtual VDS, right? It does not participate in STP. There's no STP running over here.
I mean, that 101 and 102 are physically connecting to the ESXi, right?
Correct.
Those will be trunk.
These are trunk, but these are trunk, but there is no STP protocol running between them.
Oh.
This is an end host, kind of end host for the ACI. There is no STP being sent by the virtual switch.
Okay, and there is no VPC between.
Nothing. Okay. It's a single links. That's it.
Okay, so the traffic can actually go through VMNIC 3 and return.
No, it will not. VDS does not send the packet from one VNIC to another VNIC. So if a broadcast comes from here, that broadcast will not go over here. That is the default behavior of VDS.
Okay, no, that's not what my question was. If you're trying to go to some destination, let's say while going out, if you go through VMNIC 3, there is a chance you come back through VMNIC 2, the return.
No, this runs in active standby by default.
Oh.
So if you don't do bundling, right?
Okay.
And there are multiple uplinks, all the uplinks will not be active. It will be active standby mode.
I see.
So this VDS over here, there are two ports like this. Any one port will be active at a time, other port will become inactive. If that goes down, only then the other port will become active.
I see. Good. Thank you.
All right.
If you have multiple ESXi, so same process we need to do for all.
You'll have to just add the host, right? All the ESXi host to this VDS.
And uplink for
adding the host to the VDS is manual process. Correct.
Okay.
So here I'll click on finish. So now this VDS is attached to this host. So if I go on the ESXi host now, earlier you guys saw that we had only one switch. Okay, now here if you see, we have two switches, virtual switch 0, which is having VMNIC 0, and this is for management. And this is my distributed switch, which is my VDS, which is having this two NICs, NIC 1 and NIC 2 connected to it. Okay. So now my VDS is available on the ESXi. Now what I can do, I can now map my app VM to app port group, web VM to web port group. Before I do that, if you come and ping right now also, since we have not changed the adapter port, it got disconnected. Let us relaunch it. So app VM, let us try to ping. It's not pinging. Web VM, not pinging. Okay. So now what I will do is I will move these VMs into the respective port group. So for web VM, I'll go and edit settings, change the network adapter to web EPG. And for app VM, I'll change the network adapter to app EPG port group. So I have moved the VMs from their default adapters to the app EPG port group, this one, and this is web EPG port group. Okay. So now if I go back and ping, before that, we can do one more thing. If I go in the tenant tab under app EPG, I don't know if ARP is already done or not. Oh, here I'm getting an error message. You can check this error message. What is this error? Oh, it says either the EPG is not associated with a domain or the domain does not have this VLAN ID assigned to it. There is no domain associated with both EPG or port that has the required VLAN. Oh, wow. Let us check the VLAN pool which we created. What was the VLAN pool that we created? It was VLAN 2 to VLAN 99. Yeah. And it's connected to VMM domain. And if I go in AAEP, let us just check AAEP also. VMM AAEP is attached to this domain, and this domain is attached to the VLAN pool. So why am I getting error message? Let us just check over here. The domain is called, right? We did attach the VLAN pool. I remember that. Let's just confirm it. VMM AAEP and the VMM VLAN pool. Yeah. And here also we are getting some fault. Let's check. What's the fault? Could not find adjacency. Okay, that's okay. The adjacency VNIC is not there. DB address not on the host. Okay, that's fine. There is we don't have physical uplink redundancy, it seems. So it's giving us an error message. That's okay. So let us now do what? Had actually come over here to check whether my VM is discovered over here or not. So you can see here, oh, it's already discovered. See, as soon as I changed the port group, okay, as soon as I changed the port group, immediately that guy has actually got registered over here. Under app EPG, I have got app VM. It's coming from this ESXi host, and it's coming on this port 1/leaf102 port 1/22. What is this? Leaf102 port 1/22. Okay, guys. So the actual interface on which we have it, right? That is 22 interface. That is the reason we are getting that error message. So if you see, the VM is getting learned. Okay, the VM is getting learned, but it's someone has changed the cabling. It's on port 22. Let me just add port 22 in my policy group, and I should see the error going off. So right now, if I will ping, right, the ping will not work. Although the port group is changed, but the pings will not work. Okay, the port group is changed, but the pings will not work because the interface is incorrect. So as per the diagram, the actual interface is, so someone has, you'll have to check with the lab admin. They have changed the physical interfaces, it seems. This is 1/22. Okay. Let us go back. Just forget about this interface mess up. Okay. Just pay attention on the policies and the flow of config. The interface is a big mess today. So under the tenant fabric tab, we go under access policies. This is actually 1/22. Let me delete this. Okay. So now that error should go off. Now if I come under the fault tab, the fault that we saw, right, regarding the domain missing and VLAN missing, that fault should go from the EPG. So now if I come under the fault tab, the fault is gone. Even under app EPG, because now the physical interface is also allowed with the VLAN and the domain is also allowing the same. Okay. So now, finally, if I try to ping, the ping should be successful. It is still not pinging. Let us check over here. Okay, the ping is still not there. Let us come back under the ACI, under the VDS. So we'll just verify if my VDS is able to see the leaf switches or not. So here this is the VDS. Okay, this is the VDS box. And here you can see my app EPG port group and web EPG port group. Under app EPG, I have got app VM. Under web EPG port group, I have got web VM. Okay. And here I have got two uplinks, two network adapters. Let us just check in the discovery CDP. So this is connected on leaf 102 port 1/22. Okay. One physical adapter is on leaf 102 1/22. And the other one is under the CDP. Okay, on this one, the CDP is not available. So VMNIC 2 is, let us just remove this uplink port. This one is not operational. Here you can see CDP is not there, LLDP is not there. So I'll just delete this. Because if traffic goes on that port as an active port, then the pings will not work. Okay, so I'll just keep one port. So I've kept uplink number 1, which is actually showing as connected to leaf 102 on port number 1/22. Okay. So all my traffic.
Can we see here active and standby here? Is it in this?
There is a way to see that. I don't know if that is the right way, but yeah, I think there is a way to see that. I don't recollect that way. I think it comes over here under physical adapters. This one. Somewhere it is there. I'm not able to recollect that option. I'm sorry. I don't work on VMware much. But yeah, there is a way to see which link is active and which is standby. So right now I've just kept one interface, okay, that is VMNIC 2. So now whatever traffic comes from app VM and web VM, the traffic will come to the VDS. VDS will send it on VMNIC uplink number 2. Okay, so now if we try to ping, the traffic should start going. Okay, the ping is successful. Here also, the ping is successful. So now both the VMs are able to ping their gateways. And here if I do R-A, the gateway MAC is getting resolved dynamically. 19FF, that is basically my BD MAC address. Okay. So what has happened, guys? Let me just change this diagram. We just have this link. So currently we just have one link. ESXi is using one VMNIC to connect to leaf 102 on port number 22. So my app VM is able to ping its gateway. Web VM is able to ping its gateway. But if I try to ping app VM to web VM, this ping will not work. Okay, so if I try to ping, currently I'm on app VM 192.168.2.2. This is my web VM IP. It's not going to work. Here also, if I say ping 192.168.1.2, it's not going to work because these two VMs are part of individual EPGs. My app VM is part of app EPG over here. You can see the IPs learned 1.2 app VM. Under the web VM, we have web EPG. I'm sorry. Under the web EPG, we have web VM 2.2. Okay. So my VMs are learned under the respective EPGs. Now for inter-EPG communication, I would require a contract. So finally, what we will do is, let us create a dummy contract. Okay, the contract, we'll give the name as app-web.
Akash,
Mhm.
this inter EPG, right? Suppose intra EPG, I can configure the another subnet.
Correct. It will work the same way. So if I discover my web VM also under the app EPG and I add the gateway under the BD, it will work. We'll be able to ping each other. But that traffic also will come to ACI because gateway is on ACI. It will not happen through local VDS. Okay. It will work through local VDS only if I have two VMs in the same port group because this VDS is L2. It's not L3. Okay.
Oh.
All right. So here let us add a subject. Subject as ping, and we'll add a filter. So filter is not created. There's no option to create a new filter over here. Let us just create a filter. ICMP. ICMP. And let us attach this filter to the subject that we created. All right. So now this contract I'll apply it on the EPG. I'll tell app EPG to provide the contract. And I'll ask web EPG to consume the contract. Okay. So my contract is provided and consumed. We can confirm it over here. Click on the contract name and then just check the topology, provider consumer. Now let us try to ping. Now if I try to ping.
One is provider, another one is consumer, right?
Consumer. Yes. So if you see this, the arrow coming in is consumer, arrow going out is provider. So app is able to ping web, and from here web should be able to ping app. So my inter-EPG communication is working via ACI. But this time we have done, the endpoints are virtual and we have done a VMM integration. So the same lab, which we did day before yesterday, the bare metal connectivity lab, over there, the servers were part of physical domain and we had added the servers to the EPG via static mapping. Today, the endpoints are virtual and we have added the endpoints to the EPG using dynamic mapping of VMM. Everybody got this, guys? So this is just the logic thing. Of course, once you start practicing, that's when you'll be able to understand the flow and everything. But from logic point of view, this is what the ACI does. There are two ways to add the endpoints. One is using static mapping. Other one is using dynamic.
Akash,
Mm-hmm.
initially the VMs were not able to ping their gateway. Why?
So that was because here I had one more uplink, right?
Uh-huh.
This uplink was not operational. Okay. But I had added it to the VDS. So when VDS was sending the traffic, it was choosing this uplink. And this uplink was down. So what I did was I removed this uplink from my VDS and I kept the operational one only.
It was down because there was no physical connectivity.
There is no physical, there is no physical cabling.
Okay. One more question here. What if I have a switch here? Suppose leaves are connected to the switch, okay, and servers are present below the
below that switch.
Yeah,
and there's a hypervisor there.
Yeah.
There will be a different kind of setup. will do that using L2 domain. I'll explain that also. It will come in the class. L2 out. This will be an L2 out. You can still do VMM integration. Okay. But here you have to create an L2 out. Via VMM integration, you'll be able to place the VMs in the respective EPG port groups. But this connectivity would be an L2 domain. I'll explain that. We have this topic of L2 outs in ACI. So during that class, I will explain.
Akash, so bare metal lab, we created the domain and attached the AAP, and here we can attach that.
Yeah, here there is a
the
small
only
change.
difference. The endpoints are adding that to domain. That is the only difference, right? Bare metal lab and.
Yeah, in the bare metal lab, if you remember, we did static mapping, right? We went to the EPG and we did a static mapping from here, static port mapping, right?
Yeah,
we said that the interface belongs to EPG, but here you see we did not do static mapping, but the VMs are still discovered under the EPG. Okay, so how are they getting discovered? That is the same logic. So if you see, what we are indirectly telling ACI is any traffic. Let me just show you on the. So in ACI, when we push this EPG as a port group, okay, let me show you. When we push the EPG as a port group, okay, what happened? My ACI used the VLAN from the VLAN pool, right? My ACI used the VLAN from the VLAN pool. And for ACI, that particular EPG is nothing but a VLAN. It's taking too much time to load. So here, this port group which got pushed, right? So what ACI is, according to ACI, this particular port group is what VLAN. Okay, it's not visible over here. Yeah, VLAN 2. And this port group is what? VLAN 68. But this port group is representing web EPG. So whenever my VDS, let me just show it. So indirectly, what is happening? Whenever the traffic comes from web VM, it lands on this web EPG, correct? And on this, the VLAN ID is 68. So the traffic comes on the web EPG with a VLAN tag of 68. That traffic comes to ACI. Now on ACI, what I have told that VLAN 68 is nothing but web EPG. So this app request comes on port 1/22 and it belongs to web EPG because of VLAN 68 mapping. Similarly, when app EPG got pushed, it got pushed with the VLAN ID of 2. So whenever the traffic comes from app port group, it comes with a VLAN ID of 2. And according to ACI, traffic of VLAN 2 belongs to app EPG. So this VM is discovered under app EPG. So ACI is using the VLAN IDs as a distinguisher to distinguish the traffic of which EPG is what port group and which VM is what EPG. Got it?
So leaf that it configured as a trunk, right? Leaf 102.
Correct. This port is configured as trunk port because it is part of VMM domain. There are some questions in the chat. There are a lot of things in the chat. First one is from Vakas. Once we have done integration, the switch management. Yeah, so partial management is from ACI, like creating the port groups is from ACI, but pushing the VDS and then attaching the VDS and all is manual done. Okay. That clear? Is that clear, Vakas? Your question? I think we did the lab, so it should be clear. Another question, VPC will be used instead of active and standby. Yeah, in production you can. In production, you can actually create a VPC port channel and put this in a VPC domain. That is possible, and then do nickeling on the server side.
Hello, Akash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to practice the ACI yesterday, and sorry for taking you back. I was trying to do a show IP interface brief, VRF, created a VRF, but I only saw two one EPG instead of two. I was kind of wondering what the problem. I was trying to troubleshoot it, but I couldn't get it.
You could see only one what?
EPG. One bridge domain, sorry.
One bridge domain instead of two.
Yeah.
So did you create two separate bridge domains, or did you
Yes,
create
I
two
did.
IPs?
Two.
Okay, and both the bridge domain endpoints are on the same leaf or different leaf?
Same leaf.
Okay, which lab were you trying to do? Because as far as I remember, in case of
Well, I couldn't find any lab to follow. I saw a bunch of PDF documents, but it didn't
okay, let
look
me do
like.
one thing. I'll share you the lab topology. Okay, so you follow that lab topology while doing the lab, and then try to redo it. Maybe, although you might have added both the endpoints on the leaf via static mapping or anything, but the other endpoint might not be up, because of which the corresponding BD might not have got created. Okay, I'll share you the lab topology so you can
Okay,
just try
but is
to.
there a lab guide, like a series of steps to follow, or you can just look
There is
through the video?
a lab guide. Probably I can just ask the lab admin to share it with you once you book the lab. Let me
Because the
ask him.
guide I saw had very little to do with creating EPGs and bridge domains and VRFs. It had more to do with some kind of solution, basically. Solution without questions, basically.
Let me check with the lab administrator. Let me
Okay.
ask him what he has shared, and probably I'll just try to share it with him, or if he doesn't have it, I'll ask him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have it, I'll share it with him. They can pass
Because
it on.
what I was trying to do was going through your videos and then trying to mimic what you were doing in the lab, but it didn't go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, not needed. I'll ask him to. I'll ask him to share the lab.
Okay.
Akash.
Let me just stop the recording.